Okay, so now I'm going to start rebuilding this differential, and I wasn't going to take the outdrives out, but looking at them more closely, it looks like they need to be re-greased, and I'm also going to change the seals on them. So I'm going to start doing that by starting off by taking this little grub screw out of here. Okay, so that screws out, and I'm going to take out the outdrive. Oops, got to take out this cross shaft first. Okay, so let's take the cross shaft out. It's going to come out of that hole. Dump it out right here. There it is. Okay. I'm going to carefully take that out. But I can tell it was leaking a little bit because I can see some fluid that's coming around here. Okay, and normally these Hot Bodies diffs don't really leak, even if you really fill them up, in my experience anyway. So that means there's some issue there. I'm just going to go ahead and change the O-rings. I had that same issue with my center diff the week before, and I just rebuilt it, changed the O-rings, re-lubed everything up, and it's fine now. Okay, wipe that off real good. Now this still has some stuff in there. Just blowing some of the grease out with my breath. Okay, now this is getting messy here, so I'm going to just be very careful about it. I'm going to take this bearing out. I'm going to see that one side's real clean, this other side's been attracting some dirt. So I'm just going to put my rag down and go like this, and it's going to clean all the dirt off. I'm doing it relatively light. I don't want to force any dirt into the bearing. Okay, so most of it's come off now. Might as well do the other side too. Okay, so that's nice and smooth, so that's good. That bearing's good. I'm going to wipe this thing down. Okay, the diff cup. Now, this O-ring, I'm just going to take out and toss. Okay. So, there's the O-ring. Let's put that over there. Okay, and I'm inspecting my diff cup. I want to wipe this out. This rag's getting a little bit dirty, so I'm going to switch to this other rag here. This one's clean. And you can see that came from way down there at the bottom. It's kind of hard to reach, so I'm going to put this thing in there with the rag, and that'll wipe out where the seal sits. Okay. Now I want to really clean out the hole that the outdrive comes out of, which is here. So I'm just going to roll up my rag and stick it in there. When I put the fresh grease in there, I want to make sure there's no dirt or anything like that. And you can see there was some stuff in there, remnants of the old grease, but it wasn't too bad. Okay. Now this thing drained for a little while, then I wiped it out with that yellow rag. It doesn't have to be 100% perfectly silicone free, so most of it's out, so that's fine there. Okay, and I'm also going to wipe off my shim very carefully, get the dirt off of this. Okay, that's good enough on that one. This one here, let's just wipe this pin off that holds the outdrive, and wipe this one off as well. Okay, I already wiped down those gears with the rag. They drained as much as they could, but I wiped them off a little bit more. And I ran these screws through this other rag to clean the threads off. Okay, and then I wiped that gasket down carefully. It doesn't have to be bone dry, but I don't want it to be dripping gobs of oil everywhere. Okay, so now I'm going to take this one off. That seal felt really good on that, but I'm going to replace it anyway. Okay, so same thing. I'm going to use this rag, clean part of it, to wipe the most amount of grease off of this. Now we'll switch to this cleaner one and just do a final wiping on there. Obviously the important part to have the cleanest is this part here. This part here is just going to be dirty anyway. Okay, there's a little bit of silicone in there. You can just kind of go like that and it gets most of it out, and that's good enough. Okay, this thing here I broke earlier. Trying to clean the dirt out of the bottom of the screws from the bottom of the chassis, I mean. Okay, so I'm going to put this on this side so I know which one it came from. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to wipe the, oh, here's the bearing. The bearing still feels really good. So I'm going to do the same drill here. Most of this black stuff is probably silicone that leaked out and then dirt that got attracted to it, or some grease from inside the bearing that's working its way out. So just wipe that off. Okay, and that feels really smooth still. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to do the inside of this bearing too, or clean out the inside of the inner race. And I don't think I did that to this one. It's pretty clean, but just clean it up a little more. Okay, that one's good. Let's wipe down this shim. Yes, cleaning is probably the least fun part of doing your diffs. Okay, now I already wiped the part where the gasket goes earlier. I'll go over it again, but that's why it doesn't have very much fluid on it. Okay, so that looks good. I'll wipe that down. That looks good. I'm going to wipe off, well, basically every part of this thing except for the gears. Okay, now I need a clean corner of this rag, which is looking like this one here. Pull that through a little bit and just spin it to wipe it. Yeah, that wasn't bad. Alright, so everything looks good on this one now. So let's see here. I don't like touching new gaskets and lubing everything up when I have little potential dirt particles on my hands. So I'm just going to go to my hose out here, get some soap, and wash it. Alright, so sorry about this, but I want to keep my hands nice and clean. Okay. So now I'm going to dry my hands off. I'll use this other one to dry them. Okay, so sorry about this part. And if I had some good editing software, I would just edit it out, but I don't, so okay, it took a couple extra minutes. Now I'm going to open up my grease, get that ready, and I got a couple of O-rings. Really want to keep everything clean here. Okay, so I'm going to take two out of here. I'm really looking for a place on this piece of paper that has no dirt whatsoever. So that's that place and that place. Okay, so these O-rings are good for another differential. Okay, so let's see here. I guess we can start with this. I'm going to grab my screwdriver. This screwdriver's clean. Well, let's really wipe that down just to make sure. Okay, and get some grease out of here. I'm going to fill up this little groove here and make sure that it's really lubed up well. There's really a balance on how much grease you want to put on here, because too little grease obviously is just going to make you need to have to grease them more often or cause more wear. Too much grease and it's going to be pushing out of here when you put the outdrive into the diff cup. So I just take my time, make sure everything's got a nice film of grease on there. You can see that groove has been filled up. I'll put a little more over here because I know it's going to push it down. The grease is going to get pushed down this way when I put it into the diff. Well, this one's for the crown gear. When I put it into the crown gear, but same principle for the diff cup as well. Alright, so that's good on this one. I'm going to get this other one ready as well. Okay, just put a little bit of grease on my screwdriver. Rotate it right around. I don't really want to touch this with my fingers because I don't want to get my fingers all greasy, so I'll just get my screwdriver greasy. And I think it's actually a little bit easier to put this film of grease on it. A little bit more precision. Yeah, let's put a little more right here. See, now I can tell that's way too much. That's a glob there. So I'm going to just spread it and smear it. Okay. Yeah, this part here is not the funnest, but it's in a very important step. Okay, so that now looks good. Yeah, this is getting messy. Okay, so now I got that one. Now with these seals, yeah, I got to use my finger on these. Okay. So people talk about, oh, what kind of grease should I use? You know, should I use the low-C green slime or the associated version, or should I use that grease from the motorcycle company, which I'm forgetting now? It's like another kind of green grease, or the version of their red grease. I've tried all those different ones, and actually I still have plenty of all of them, but the Mobil 1 synthetic grease works well. Okay, so now it's got a generous coat of grease on there. Okay, so I'm going to push this in here. Don't worry about the excess because we can just wipe that off. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to wipe a little bit off now because that is kind of a lot. Okay. Yeah, grease is messy. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to wipe my finger. There's going to be a lot of wiping going on. My finger is wiped. Okay, now I'm going to put my bearing back on here, spinning nice and free. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to put the shim on first instead of afterwards, because sometimes when you run your car for a while, the dog bones that go in here, or the swing shafts, they kind of make this part raise up a little bit, and it's hard to slip the shim over it. So let me actually just find out first if I'm going to be able to do it from the outside. Yeah, it's kind of hanging up there. So, since I don't want to mess with that, I'll just put it on this side. Okay, so there we go. Now looking at this one here, I can tell there's going to be a lot of grease that's going to be coming off of it, which is okay. I'll just wipe it with a paper towel. Now when I put this in here, I want to do it real careful. I don't want to put too much pressure on any side of this thing, and this extra shim is now a wrench in the works for sure. So I got to be careful with this. Okay. So now this thing is hitting this gasket. Oh, bearing's going that way. It's getting messier. So what I'm going to do is use this here, this sun gear, to pressurize the seal there so it doesn't get popped out. Okay. So now when I push this in, just do it real careful. Yeah, that fell right in the grease, but it'll be okay. Okay, now you can see the grease is bulging up between the bearing and the outdrive in there, and it's just going to be a little bit messy to clean, but it's not that big of a deal. Now this here, I can turn this, and it just keeps the seal in place and keeps it square down and everything. Okay, so I'm going to put this down for a second. Let's take that off, so you can see the seal's in there and everything looks good. That can just be wiped off. It's not that big a deal. Wipe my finger off too. Okay. So now, I'm going to grab a paper towel from my roll, and I'm just going to run the paper towel between the outdrive and the bearing to get that excess grease out of there. and you can see some of it's coming out. And this is pushed in a little bit too far right now, so you can just pull it out, stick the towel in there. Still in too far, it's too tight. The towel can't fit. Oh, the shim can. Yeah, it's harder to do the shims this way. Okay. So there we go. I'm just doing it real light. I'm just letting the strength of the paper towel, which is minimal, do the wiping. Okay, put that up there so I can use it later. That's there. Okay, now let's wipe this. I want to double check and make sure. There's plenty of grease there. I'm going to put this on one more time since I did that. This is keeping the seal in place. And just push everything back together. I want to make sure that there's no chance of a leak here. And that actually looks really good right now. Okay. So I'm going to grab my cross shaft. Get in there. Okay. Now the cross shaft is in, but I usually take it out because it's going to pick up some grease or some old silicone or something like that. So I'll just run it all the way through to the other side, find a clean spot on my rag, and then put it back in. Okay, so that one's done. What I forgot to do was I like to compare my old O-ring to the new one to see if there's any difference in thickness or, you know, the inner diameter getting stretched out or something like that. So this is the old one here,